After a bit more reading and digging around, I am further convinced that this case against the Department of Homeland Security could spell fairly serious trouble for Prince Harry and his immigration status. So stick around and I'll explain why. Welcome back to the channel. So thanks to Newsweek for reporting on this, because I've been registering and trying to get hold of various filings, but I've got to wait 10 US business days before I'll get access to the account. But anyway, thanks to Newsweek, who I will link in the description below, for reporting on this and providing some insight into what at least I've seen part of, which is this filing by the Heritage Foundation against the Department of Homeland Security for the production of documents. Now, this news article here says that this filing provides that this is an action under the Freedom of Information Act to compel the production. So a court filing to ask the court to force the production of information by the Department of Homeland Security in respect of its decisions for Prince Harry to enter the United States and allow him to remain up until today's date. The Heritage Foundation has argued the decision should be open to the public for scrutiny to allow examination of whether the department in general applies the rules without favour. And of course, that I suspect is going to be the case widely, that they should be applying the same rules to everybody without favour, in particular to one person or another. The article goes on, media coverage has directly surfaced questions regarding whether the department is enforcing the law in a discretionary area consistently, impartially, or is showing favouritism. It goes on, Harry has a severely diminished privacy interest due to revelations, including in his book Spare. In other words, you can't have it both ways. You can't, on the one hand, claim that you have a privacy interest, so people shouldn't be looking into your documents and things like that, at the same time as publishing all of your private and intimate moments, thoughts, experiences, and so on in a book such as this. Lawyers for the foundation go on to say that Prince Harry has made affirmative choices to put almost every aspect of his life on display, including those aspects traditionally kept private by public figures. Now, this goes against, not this writing, you understand, the principle of publishing all of this stuff goes against the notion where I have said in previous videos there is no automatic right to privacy in a public place, save for situations where a court may determine that you can reasonably expect privacy, such as you get people of public importance, such as singers, rock stars, politicians, and so on, may on the one hand have a lot of their life in full public view, but at the same time, they might want to retain certain aspects of their life and keep them private. So if they are out with, let's say, young children in a coffee shop, as was one such example that went to court, then the courts are likely to favour the legitimate interest and reasonable expectation of privacy out in a public place. But as this article suggests, you can't have it both ways. So if you've made the conscious choice to make these revelations and to have all of your information put out in documentaries and books and so on for commercial gain, as it says here, these revelations have been made explicitly for massive commercial gain. I would agree. Then it goes on to say the foregoing history of revealing virtually every aspect of private life for commercial gain is perhaps best expressed by South Park's biting and equal opportunity satire. South Park deemed the contradiction between his claims of privacy and the repeated public actions. Just as an aside, there has been other reports that all of this has been denied, that they've been seeking privacy and so on. So just to be fair, that has been denied in certain reports. To be so great that they devoted an entire episode and so on. The court filings also revealed that the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service has been unable to find Harry's file. On or about March 13th, counsel for the Heritage Foundation received a call indicating that they were having difficulty locating the file. Goes on to say, no matter how an alien is authorized to enter the country, they will have an A file in some form. The department makes commonly requested A files publicly available under the Freedom of Information Act electronic reading room. This file also shows that more than 500,000 Americans wanted his visa to be reviewed. So if we take a very brief look at the bit of a document that I do have, which is here, it sets out, again, as I said, this is an action to compel the production of information related to information to admit him into the United States and allow him to remain. So as I said, I will link this article in the description below, so you can go and take a look at that as well. And for those of you that are interested, this is the form itself. It asks these questions, not have you been convicted necessarily, but the first question, are you or have you ever been a drug user or addict? Now, according to Harry's book Spare and the revelations made therein, that might make this question a very poignant one. And the second question, have you ever violated or engaged in a conspiracy to violate any laws relating to controlled substances? Now, any mention of any use of any drug whatsoever is going to make these two questions very important. But what is really important is the fact that the Department of Homeland Security is going to have to respond to this lawsuit to compel them to disclose this information. Now, this legal complaint was not a single one-pager that said, please, can we see these documents? I've tried to get hold of the original complaint, but as I said, I've got to wait 10 business days to get access to the filing system. So even as a lawyer, presumably because I'm in the UK, but presumably any lawyer has to wait to get their new account validated. But anyway, but apparently this is a near 1,400-page legal complaint provided by the Heritage Foundation, and declaring that this is of immense public interest as to how Prince Harry answered these questions. Now, under normal circumstances, the US government has 20 business days within which to respond to requests made under the Freedom of Information Act, except in unusual circumstances. Now, at the best of times, this would probably count as an unusual circumstance because there is a non-working member of a royal family of another jurisdiction that has come into the United States. So that in itself might count as unusual circumstances, but would it qualify for refusing to comply with such a request? Now, if the reports are true and that they simply couldn't find the file, that's a different problem in itself. I would probably suggest, and I don't think it's being uncharitable to suggest, that a department would not just lose a document like that, and it will be available somewhere. So is it the case that it's been lost, or is it in fact the case that there's some decision-making going on to actually prevent this from circulating? Either way around, I suspect that we will find out soon enough. Because according to the news reports, this request was denied within 24 hours within that 20-day period, prompting the Heritage Foundation to then launch an appeal. And reportedly, Niall Gardner, who is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom, who Margaret Thatcher, by the way, was an ex-UK Prime Minister, says that there is a very clear US public interest in ensuring that Prince Harry did not receive any favourable or preferential treatment by the immigration authorities. And any discrepancy between the details provided in his immigration application and the revelations of drug use in his book Spare would have serious implications for his legal status in the United States. And going on to say that Harry should welcome the release of his immigration application so the public can see what was put in that application. And I, for one, would agree with that approach, because if that application was filled out fully, factually, honestly, and it was released and just set out exactly this is what was said in that application, and if the Department of Homeland Security were to provide reasoning why they overlooked any such admissions, if such admissions were made, then the whole of the public would have an explanation and full transparency as to exactly what happened. If, on the other hand, as this news article suggests, there is any discrepancy between the details provided in that application and as per the revelations in the book Spare, then they would, I would assume, have serious implications for his legal status. Because after all, the general public, again, I would assume, is going to want some level of fairness in the rules being applied fairly and equally to everybody without favour or preferential treatment. So one way or another, the Department of Homeland Security is going to have to respond to this court filing and either produce the documents or produce some reason as to why they can't produce those documents. But I don't think that's going to wash with the court. I think the court ultimately, here's a prediction alert, the court ultimately is going to say, Well, of course, you have the documents, so just provide them and make them available. And if the department responds by saying, well, we can't find it, or whatever other excuse there is, the court is probably then going to step up and force them to backtrack and dig out any records and any filings, because I don't think the court is going to allow, at least most courts, in my experience, in my view, courts are not going to allow this to just wander. Now that there's a filing, courts typically are going to act independently, as they should, and I would think order up the production of these documents. So once again, let me know what you think. What do you expect these documents to show if and when they are publicized? Do you expect that it's going to contain all of the same sort of indications that match up with the book Spare, or are you in for a surprise? Either way, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because over 60% of you are still not subscribed, so please do that. It does help me out, and I enjoy helping you to understand law. And we are really closing in fast on 300,000 subscribers, so in celebration of that, please join as a member, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time.